Hello friends, in this video we're going to look at some idioms and expressions in American English that come from the idea that life is a pioneering journey. In a previous video we looked at some idioms and expressions that come from the basic idea that life is a journey, which is a metaphor. And on this journey we are on a road, and the road is like time. In front of us on the road is the future, and behind us is the past. As we travel along the road, different things happen to us, and from this idea we get a lot of idioms and expressions. Then in another lesson, we built on this idea that life is a journey by looking at a specific kind of journey, and that is a journey in a boat or a journey on the water. And so from this we get a lot of idioms and expressions that come from the seafaring tradition in Britain and in the United States. In this lesson, we're going to be looking at idioms and expressions that build on the idea that life is a journey, but the journey this time is a pioneering journey. So these idioms and expressions are unique to the American experience and American culture and history, because after the Europeans came to the United States or the Americas, many of them started traveling west as pioneers to find new land and new places to live. So a pioneer is one of the first people to go to a particular area in order to live and work there. So in American history, when the Europeans and the early Americans started traveling to the West, many of them followed certain trails in order to go there. For example, in this picture here, this is a picture of the Oregon Trail that traveled from the middle of the United States, before there were states there, all the way out to the west coast of North America to Oregon. So many of the pioneers traveled these trails or these paths in order to go west. Sometimes they traveled alone as a family or just one or two people, and sometimes they traveled in groups. So in this picture we can see what we call a wagon train of people traveling to the west. So to look at these idioms and expressions, we're going to focus on a few specific elements of the pioneering journey. And the first one that we're going to look at is the trail. So the trail is the path or the road. A trail is a road that people follow in order to get to where they're going. So the first expression here is to make tracks. When you make tracks, you are leaving a trail behind you. So you can see in the picture here, this looks like a wagon path or a wagon track, and the tracks are the marks that they're leaving in the ground. So to use the expression to make tracks means basically just to leave somewhere. You're going somewhere. You're making tracks. You're beating down the ground here. For example, it's getting late, Jim. I think we should make tracks home. So make tracks home just means go home. You're leaving somewhere to go home. The next expression here is to hit the trail. So to hit the trail as an expression means to go somewhere, usually with a specific purpose or goal. So there's specific kinds of trails. Now these trails are paths that go to a specific place that other people are going. So to hit the trail is to go somewhere specific or to have a specific goal. For example, whenever there's an election, candidates have to hit the campaign trail. To say that something is off the beaten path means that it's not known or popular with many people. So a trail is a path that many people follow. That's why it's a trail. They're leaving marks in the ground. We could also call this a beaten path. It's beaten because you can see, like in the picture here, it's dirt. There's not anything growing on it. So the growing things were beaten down by people traveling on the road. So this trail here, we could call this a beaten path because many people have traveled it. If we say that something is off the beaten path, it means that not many people travel that road. So it's not known or popular with many people. For example, do you know of any good restaurants that are off the beaten path? So this expression, off the beaten path, it gets used a lot for example, tourism. If you're traveling to a place where there's a lot of tourists, many people go to the same places, the same restaurants, the same museums, the same buildings and architecture, the same places. So those are all on the beaten path. Now, if you travel somewhere as a tourist and you want to find somewhere that not many people go to. We would call that off the beaten path. It's a place that not many people travel to. So it gets used a lot for restaurants, for example, if you want to find a good restaurant that not many people go to. The next expression here is trailblazer, or to be a trailblazer. So a trailblazer is a person who is the first to do something that other people do later. This expression comes from the people who used to mark the trails. So if somebody is a pioneer and the first person to travel through a wild place, they would mark some things like trees so that other people could follow them before there is a path. So blazing the trail literally means making a mark. So we use this now as an expression to mean somebody who's the first to do something that other people follow later. For example, she was a trailblazer as the only woman in the U.S. Senate. So this is something that's commonly seen in politics, for example. If somebody's the first woman to do something, if somebody's the first person of color to do something, if somebody's the first whatever group to do something, then we can call them a trailblazer. Related to this is the expression to blaze a trail. So the trailblazer is the person, and to blaze a trail is the verb phrase. So to blaze a trail is to do something that has never been done before. For example, Steve Jobs blazed a trail in the computer and technology industry. So we can say Steve Jobs, who was one of the founders of Apple and Apple computers, he blazed a trail because he had many ideas about computers and computer technology that many people didn't have before. So he had a lot of new ideas. And after he and the people he worked with created this technology, other people followed along, creating similar technology. So because he was one of the first people to do many things with computers, he blazed a trail. To trail off is to fade away, as with speech, words, singing, etc. So we can see here in the picture we have a trail. This is a main trail. But if we look here to the side, we can see there's a smaller trail that's leading off somewhere different, and we don't know where it's going. So we use this expression to trail off when somebody is usually like they're talking and they stop in the middle of their sentence, or they just start talking quieter and quieter and quieter, so you can't hear them anymore. For example, the teacher often trails off in the middle of his sentences when he is thinking of something else. So if somebody starts talking to you and then they just kind of get quieter and quieter, or they just stop talking in the middle of their sentence because they forgot what they were talking about, we can call this trailing off. So it's like the idea that they had a main point or a main purpose or a main idea, and then they just kind of got lost. They went in a different direction with it. The next expression here, to stake a claim, means to say or show that you have a right to have something or that it belongs to you. So the expression comes from a couple of things. First, there's the claim. So a claim is like a piece of land or a piece of property. To claim something is to say that it belongs to you. The stake is like a wooden stick that you would put into the ground to mark that place. So to stake a claim would be like to put a wooden stick or some kind of a marker in the ground to show that it belongs to you or that it belongs to somebody else. So when we're staking a claim, we're showing that we have a right to have something or that it belongs to us. For example, at movie theaters, people often put their jackets in seats to stake a claim while they go and get popcorn or do something else. So you're claiming it as your place or your spot or something that belongs to you. To pull up stakes is to take all the things that you own and go to live in a different place. So we're using this word stake again in a similar way, but not about claiming what belongs to us. We're pulling up the stakes. That's because when people were traveling as pioneers, often they would camp because there's no houses, there's no buildings. So they would have to set up tents. And when they would set up a tent, they would have to tie the tent to the ground with stakes, whether wooden stakes or metal stakes. They would put them in the ground. So the stake was the stick, or like the big nail that they would put into the ground to hold the tent up. And people still do that now. If you've ever gone camping, if you want to hold the tent down, you put stakes in the ground. So to pull up the stakes means you're taking the tent down. And if you're taking the tent down, that means you're leaving. So to pull up stakes basically just means to leave someplace, usually if you're moving to a new place. For example, this is the 4th time in 5 years that we've had to pull up stakes. The next element we're going to look at is the horse, because many of these pioneers would travel by horse or using horse power to pull their wagons. So there's a lot of expressions and idioms in English that come from the horse. For example, to hold your horses. Hold your horses is used to tell someone to stop and consider carefully their decision or opinion about something. For example, I know you want to get going, but just hold your horses. We've got to make sure everything is ready. So if we look at the picture here, you can see horses want to go. They want to run or they want to walk. But when the horses are attached to a wagon or to a trailer or something, they have these ropes attached to them. And if you pull on the ropes, you're holding the horses, right? So holding your horses is basically just stopping the horse from going. Now, we're using this here as an expression to talk about when somebody is excited or eager to do something or to go somewhere. So if we tell them to hold their horses, we're basically just telling them to wait, to stop and wait before they do something. And this gets used quite a bit with children. If children are being impatient or too excited about something, then their parents will say, hey, hold your horses. The next expression here, don't look a gift horse in the mouth, or never look a gift horse in the mouth. This is actually a proverb, and it's said to advise someone not to refuse something good that is being offered. So a proverb is a little bit different than an idiom, because with proverbs, the words almost never change. So if somebody's going to say this, then they'll say the whole thing. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth, or never look a gift horse in the mouth. We don't normally change the words in a proverb. So this one, we say it if somebody's giving you something, not to question it or not to refuse it. For example, I know it's not the color you wanted, but it's a free car. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Basically, the idea is if somebody is giving you a horse as a gift, it is rude or impolite of you to look at the horse's mouth. Now, why would you look at a horse's mouth? From what I've read, you can tell how old a horse is by looking at the horse's teeth. So if you're looking the horse in the mouth, you're trying to see how old it is, if it's a young horse or an old horse. But if somebody's giving you a horse as a gift, it's rude of you to look at it to see how old it is. Like if it's really old, you're going to give it back. No, you're not. You're going to take it as a gift because it's a gift. So anytime somebody offers you something or gives you something, it's impolite to like question the quality of it or the color of it or something like that. We just say, hey, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. If somebody's giving you something, then just accept it without questioning. The next expression, put the cart before the horse, is kind of a funny one. So you have to know what a cart is in order to understand the expression. So the cart is something that a horse can pull. So here we have a horse and we have the cart that it's pulling. So to put the cart before the horse is saying to do things in the wrong order. Because if you look here, a horse pulling a cart, the horse goes first and then the cart. So the horse is first. Now here's a picture, it's kind of a funny one, where the cart is before the horse. Now this doesn't really work. This is not how horses pull carts. You don't really see horses pushing carts. So to put the cart before the horse is to put things or do things in the wrong order. For example, you've got to register for your classes before you buy the books. Don't put the cart before the horse. So if you're ever doing something in the wrong order, somebody might say to you, don't put the cart before the horse, or you're putting the cart before the horse. And before here just means in front of. So you're just doing things in the wrong order. The next expression is another proverb. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So if somebody is saying this, they will say the whole thing, or they'll say this first part here, because they expect that you already know the second part. So that's why the second part here is in parentheses, because sometimes people will say this part and sometimes they won't. because they expect you already know the ending of it. So the expression or the proverb, "you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink," is used to emphasize or make stronger that you can make it easy for someone to do something, but you cannot force them to do it. For example, the teacher gave the students all of the questions and answers for the test, but some of them still didn't study. Well, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So the idea here, obviously, is that horses drink water. Well, you can bring the horse down to the water, but you can't force the horse to drink the water, even though it's good for them. I don't think you would ever try to force a horse's head into the water to drink. It's not going to drink. So it just means that you're trying to make it possible or easy for somebody to do something, but you can't force them to do it. You can only give them the option or the opportunity. The next expression is chomping at the bit. So chomping at the bit means to be very eager to do something. This comes from the piece of metal that goes in a horse's mouth when they have a harness on them. So this piece of metal that's in the horse's mouth is called the bit. The bit. So sometimes when horses are anxious or nervous or excited, they'll start chewing on this bit or chomping on it. So chomping is another word for chewing. So they'll be chomping on the bit. And so we use this expression to mean that you're very eager to do something. For example, as soon as they saw it start to snow, the kids were chomping at the bit to go build a snowman. So chomping at the bit, somebody's very eager or excited to do something. And you can tell by looking at them. The next expression is to take the reins. So the reins on a horse are the ropes that are attached to the horse's head that help to control the horse. So the reins are ropes that allow the rider to control the direction that the horse's head is going. So they're kind of attached to the bit in the bridle here. So to take the reins means to take control of something, especially an organization or a country, because the reins allow the rider to control the horse. So if we say that somebody takes the reins of an organization or a country or something, we mean they're taking control of it. For example, in the United States, a president is elected in November, but doesn't take the reins of government until the middle of January. So in the United States, the elections happen in November, but the president isn't inaugurated until the middle of January. So that's when the new president would take the reins, take control. Related to this is the expression to rein in. So we can rein in something or rein in someone. That's what the ST and the SO mean. ST is something, SO is someone. So we can put different people or things in here. So to rein in something means to control undesirable activity or growth, or control someone who is behaving badly. So the reins, like we said before, allow the rider to control the horse. Now, if you rein in the horse, that means you're pulling back on the reins in order to stop the horse from going. You're controlling the horse. You're pulling on them actively. So when we're reining something in, we're stopping it or controlling it. So, for example, the candidate for mayor promised to lower taxes and rein in city spending. So they're trying to control the growth of city spending. And the next one here is kind of related too, and that's to give someone or give something free rein. So free rein is kind of the opposite of reining in. Reining in is stopping or slowing down or controlling something. To give free rein means to give somebody or something the ability to act freely. So to give someone or something free rein is to give freedom to act and make decisions without first getting permission. For example, the students were given free rein to decide what to write their research papers on. And we can see in the picture here, the rider, he has the ropes or the reins in his hand, but he's not pulling on them. He's leaving them very loose because he's giving the horse free rein. Free rein means he's letting it loose. So reining in, you can see he's pulling back very tight, so he's controlling. Free rein, it's loose, so he's letting the horse go where the horse wants. Horsepower is the unit we use for measuring the power of an engine. So it's kind of funny. This is probably a familiar word if you've ever looked at cars, or if you're interested in cars, horsepower. So we use this to measure the power of an engine. For example, the new Ford Mustang has up to 480 horsepower. So it's kind of funny, and it shows you about the culture and how important horses are in the culture, that we measure engine power by horsepower, like how many horses. So if we say 480 horsepower, it would be like the same amount of power that 480 horses have. And here we can see these horses are pulling this, this machine. It looks like a tiller or something. So the horses are pulling. So this is 2 horsepower right here. There's 2 horses pulling. They're giving power. So we measure the power of engines by horsepower. To horse around is to behave in a silly and noisy way. For example, while the boys were horsing around, they knocked over and broke the lamp. There's a typo there. It should say and. So horses like to play. They run around, they play with each other. So we call it horsing around. And this expression will get used usually by parents if they have children who are just like running around like crazy and being rowdy. We say, hey, stop horsing around. People sometimes call it horseplay too. Stop the horseplay. To beat a dead horse is to continue to talk about or focus on something that is already finished or doesn't matter anymore. For example, I know I forgot your birthday once, but that was like 5 years ago. How long are you going to beat that dead horse? So the idea here of beating a dead horse is you're not going to get the horse to do anything by beating it, by hitting it or whipping it. So there's no point in beating a dead horse because it's not going to change the horse in what they're doing. They're dead. They're not going anywhere, right? So we use this expression if somebody like keeps talking about something that's over or in the past or that nobody cares about anymore, we can say that they're beating a dead horse. So if somebody just keeps talking and talking and talking about something that nobody cares about, they're beating a dead horse. Or if somebody keeps bringing up something from the past, then they're beating a dead horse. To change horses in midstream is to make major changes in an activity that has already begun, or to change one's mind about something in the middle of doing it. Now, this one actually I had not heard before until President Obama used it a few times in some speeches or talks that he was giving. He talked about changing horses in midstream. So the idea here is if you're on a horse crossing a river, you're not going to change to another horse in the middle of the river. That would be awkward and hard to do and not very smart. So you can see here, like this person is crossing the river. They're not going to try and jump from this horse to this horse in the middle of the water because they'll probably just fall in the water. So it's a bad idea. So to change horses in midstream is to change what you're doing in the middle of an activity, usually something that it's hard to change your mind about or change what you're doing. For example, when COVID-19 came to the United States, it was in the middle of a semester. So schools had to change horses in midstream and do everything online. So they're changing horses in midstream means that they had to change the way that they were teaching in the middle of the semester. So midstream is like the middle of the time or the middle of the semester. Changing horses means changing how they're teaching or what they're doing. To saddle up is to get ready to go somewhere. So when you're riding a horse, the rider sits on a saddle. So this here is called the saddle. Now, if you're preparing to ride the horse, then you have to put the saddle on the horse. You don't just leave the saddle on there all the time. The horse wouldn't like that. So if you're getting ready to ride the horse, you have to put the saddle on the horse. So we say saddle up. Saddle up means to put the saddle on the horse. So sometimes people will use the expression saddle up when they're telling somebody to get ready to go somewhere. For example, we don't have a lot of time before we need to be there, so saddle up and let's go. Just means get ready. To get back in the saddle is to do something that you stopped doing for a period of time. So To get back in the saddle means that you are not in the saddle. You got out of the saddle. In the saddle means you're on top of it. You're riding it. Okay. So to get back in the saddle means that at some point you got off the saddle. You got off the horse. To get back in the saddle means that you're getting back onto the horse. So we can use this if somebody stops doing something and then starts doing it again. So they're starting to do it again. They're getting back in the saddle. For example, I haven't exercised in a while, but my pants are starting to get tight. So I think it's time to get back in the saddle, meaning it's time to start exercising again. So you can see here, this guy, he's about to get into the saddle, getting back on the saddle. To spur on someone or to spur someone on means to encourage them. And this comes from these things that horse riders sometimes have on their boots called spurs. So this is called a spur. And the rider would use this to kind of kick the horse a little bit. So it's going to hurt the horse, but it'll make the horse jump and go forward. So to spur the horse is to get the horse to move quickly, to encourage the horse to move. So if we talk about spurring on someone or spurring them on, we're encouraging them to go somewhere or to do something. For example, he was spurred on in his work because he needed to provide for his family. To come down off your high horse or to get down off your high horse is to stop talking as if you were better or more clever than other people. So the high horse, really, it doesn't mean like the horse is high. It's just that when you're sitting on a horse, you're higher up than somebody who's walking. So we can see here, this guy's riding a horse and this guy's walking on his feet. So he's higher up than this guy is, which means he's looking down on this guy. Now, to look down on somebody is another expression that we use when we think that we're better than them somehow. We can say that if we think we're more moral than they are, or are richer than they are, or better than they are, we're looking down on them. So to tell somebody to get down off their high horse or to come down off their high horse is to tell them to stop thinking or talking like they're better than somebody else. For example, you need to get off your high horse and admit you made a mistake. So sometimes you'll hear if one person is acting like they're better than another person, then somebody else will tell them, hey, get off your high horse. And the last element of the pioneering journey we're going to look at here is the wagon. So many of these pioneers traveled across the country by wagon. So there's a lot of expressions that come from using wagons or wagons themselves. The first one here is linchpin. Linchpin. So a linchpin is a person or thing that holds something together, the most important part of a complex situation or system. So the word linchpin, a pin is like a little metal piece of metal. So a linchpin is the piece of metal that goes on a wagon axle to hold the wheel on. So here's the wagon wheel, and there's an axle that connects two wheels together. So this linchpin is what is holding the wheel onto the axle, which means that if I take this pin and pull it out, the wheel would fall off of the axle, fall off the wagon. So obviously this linchpin, this pin here, is very, very important in order for the wagon to function correctly. So a linchpin is anything that holds something together, the most important part of a complex situation or system. For example, nurses are the linchpin of the health service, which means that if there weren't nurses, then the health system or the health service would not work correctly. Also, like if you're trying to make an argument, the most important point or the most important piece of evidence that you have, you could call that your linchpin, because it's the thing that if you don't have it, then everything else comes apart or falls apart or doesn't work. To hitch one's wagon to someone or to hitch one's wagon to something means to rely on someone or something to bring you success. So we have here in this picture two wagons. There's the front wagon and the back wagon. So these wagons are connected together. And another word for connecting is to hitch. So these wagons are hitched together. Now, the horses are pulling this wagon here. The only reason this wagon is going is because it's hitched to this wagon here. It's hitched to it. So in order for this wagon to go forward, it needs to be connected to or hitched to this wagon. So to say that someone's hitched their wagon to someone or hitched their wagon to something means that they're relying on that person or that thing to bring them success. For example, many people accused Hillary Clinton of hitching her wagon to Bill in order to boost her own career in politics. So if you're not familiar with them, Bill and Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton was the president of the United States before George W. Bush, and his wife's name was Hillary. So before Bill was president, Hillary, they were married. But after Bill was president, then Hillary Clinton started running for her own political office. And she was, for example, a senator of New York. So some people were saying that she hitched her wagon to Bill. So she was using her husband's success in order to boost or make her own career in politics better. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. It's just an example here. So if somebody's using somebody else for their success, we can say they're hitching their wagon to them. Another one using this word hitch is to get hitched. So to get hitched just means to get married. For example, many Americans wait to get hitched until they finish college or get a good job. So we can see these horses are connected to each other. They're hitched together. They're hitched together. So to get hitched is to get married, because when you get married, you get connected to somebody else. You go through life together, like these two horses. And here's another proverb: the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So we don't really change the words here. If somebody says this, they say the whole thing. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. And the idea is that attention is paid to those problems that are made most noticeable. Basically, if somebody complains enough, then people are going to try and fix their problem, right? So for example, after complaining about it for a month, my landlord finally fixed the hot water in my apartment. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. So if you complain enough, you'll probably get what you want. So the idea is that if you have a wheel, like on a wagon, and it's squeaking, then you're going to put some grease, like the oil stuff, on the axle so that the wheel stops squeaking, because nobody wants to hear a squeaky wheel. So they're going to do something to stop the squeaking. So in this case, the squeaky wheel is the person who's complaining about something, and getting the grease means that they'll get what they're complaining about. They'll get what they want, so that people won't have to listen to them complain anymore. This next one here is to be stuck in a rut, or just in a rut. Stuck in a rut means too fixed in one particular type of job or activity, method, etc., and needing to change. For example, I need to change jobs. After 15 years here, I feel like I'm stuck in a rut. So the idea is coming from a rut in a path. So if we look at this path here, we can see that there's kind of a trench here, or what we call a rut in the dirt, so that if anybody else travels on this path, they're going to have to follow these exact same tracks, because the wheels will just go into these tracks automatically. And we can see in the lower picture here, this wagon is stuck in this rut in the road. It's stuck there, it can't get out, so they have to push it out of the rut. So the idea of the rut is that so many people have gone on this road that it starts to dig into the dirt. And in life, sometimes we get so stuck in our routine or the situation that we're in that we say that we're in a rut. So if you find that you're doing the same things every day, if you have the same exact routine every day, and then you start to get sick of that, you don't like it anymore, you can say you're stuck in a rut. Like basically you want to change what you're doing. But it's hard to change. It's hard to change because you're stuck. You're stuck in these holes here in the rut. And this last one here is to circle the wagons. So to circle the wagons is an expression that means when a group unites to protect other members of their group from some attack. So as we talked about at the beginning of this presentation, when pioneers were traveling across the United States, Oftentimes they would travel in groups or wagon trains. Now, when they're camping, in order to protect their wives and their children and their animals, they would put the wagons in a circle like this. So the wagons create kind of like a wall to protect the people inside. So they have circled the wagons. They've put the wagons in a circle. So the circle is like protection. So to circle the wagons is when a group unites to protect other members of their group from some kind of attack. For example, whenever a politician is accused of doing something wrong, the other members of their party usually circle the wagons to protect them. And if you ever pay attention to the news, especially political news, you'll see this expression get used. Like if a Republican does something wrong, like illegal or immoral, then other Republicans will try to defend that person. So the media will say that they circled the wagons. Or if a Democrat does something wrong, then other Democrats will protect that Democrat. They'll circle the wagons. So it's like they're all trying to protect that person from people criticizing them or complaining about them. All right, so that's it for the expressions for this metaphor. Life is a pioneering journey. Thanks for watching.